Everyone tells you to stay calm. Your therapist, your boss, your mother, most of all. And here is the thing nobody in that room will ever tell you. Your ancestors would consider that advice genuinely dangerous. They needed you to get angry, not politely, not diplomatically, at exactly the right moment, with exactly enough force, in front of exactly the right people. And when you did, something extraordinary happened. The other person recalculated. They adjusted their estimate of your worth on the spot. And then they acted accordingly, often before they had fully decided to. Psychologists Lisa Sell, Tooby, and Leda Cosmides spent years working out why. They called it the recalibrational theory of anger, and what they found is quietly unsettling. Anger is not a loss of control. It is one of the most precisely engineered negotiations your brain can run. Here is how it works. When you feel wronged, your brain estimates how much the other person is currently weighting your welfare relative to their own. And if that number is too low, your brain does something remarkable. It floods your body with norepinephrine, tenses your muscles, and puts you in a state that every human on the planet recognizes instantly as a credible threat signal. Your ancestors would read that state without needing to think about it. They had no choice but to. And here's the part that most people never think about. The anger was always a choice at a deeper level, not in the sense that you decided to feel it, but in the sense that your brain chose to display it, to send the signal, to hold your welfare hostage until the math improved. If you have ever noticed the heat of anger fading the second you feel the other person has genuinely understood you, that is not a coincidence. That is the negotiation ending. The signal is no longer needed because the target received it. Sell, Tooby, and Cosmides tested this across cultures and found the same core pattern everywhere. Anger as a bargaining tool is universal. It is one of the most cross-culturally validated aspects of human psychology we have. The specific triggers and rules for when anger is appropriate vary widely, but the underlying mechanism, the negotiation signal underneath, does not. You have ever noticed, have you, that anger rarely fires at the person who hurt you directly. It fires at the person standing next to them, the bystander, the one who is supposed to be watching, weighing in, keeping things fair. That is because anger was never just a private conversation. It was a public announcement. It was your nervous system running an ad in the social marketplace, telling everyone present, "This person miscalculated my worth. I am correcting the record. Watch what happens to people who make that mistake." Now here is the other question nobody asks. Why does it feel so involuntary? Why does it flood your body before you have any say in it? To understand that, you have to go back much further than psychology. You have to go to anthropology. In a small band of hunter-gatherers, nobody was neutral on you. Everyone had an opinion, and it spread fast. Anthropologist Christopher Boehm spent decades studying these groups, and what he found was a system called counter-dominance. The band as a whole actively kept any one person from taking too much. The punishment was not prison or a fine. It was social, ridicule, shunning, exclusion from the next hunt. A gradual slide down the ladder until the group stopped seeing you as someone whose claims deserved weight. If you were the kind of person who let others walk over you without pushing back, the group did not just feel slightly uncomfortable around you, they started to discount your claims, your share of the kill, your place in decisions that mattered to your survival. And this was not a slow cultural shift happening over generations. This was a real, immediate, life or death calculation happening every single day. When food was scarce and danger was constant, being the person the group could ignore was a serious survival risk. The cost of appearing weak was not bruised feelings. It was losing access to the things that kept you alive. This is why anger feels physical in a way that other emotions do not. The surge, the tension, the heat, the heart pounding. That is your nervous system, preparing you to fight for your place in the hierarchy. It feels involuntary because your ancestors who could mobilize that state instantly, without hesitation, were the ones who maintained their status and access to resources. The ones who hesitated were the ones who got pushed down. So the response got locked in deep, below the level of conscious choice, running on hardware that was designed before conscious choice existed. And here is the part that will reframe the whole thing for you. The anger was never just about the moment. It was about the future. When you got angry, you were not just solving today's argument. You were sending a message that everyone watching would remember. You were telling the band, I count. My interests deserve weight. Do not test me again. And that message, broadcast across all those watching eyes, protected you long after the moment passed. The bystanders updated their model of you. The cost of messing with you went up, and you did not have to do a thing except send the signal once, which is exactly why it is so hard to let go. The anger that flared up 3 hours ago is still running in the background because the social update is not complete yet. The other person has not fully recalibrated. The audience has not fully registered. Your nervous system knows this even if you do not, and it keeps the system hot until the negotiation is done. But here is the mismatch that modern life creates on purpose, and nobody talks about. In a band of 30 people who all knew you from birth, the social costs of mistreating someone were immediate and real. The person you were rude to would be sitting across from you at dinner that night. The slight you let pass would be remembered by everyone who saw it. In a world of millions of strangers and online anonymity, those costs are almost never enforced. You can be rude to a waiter and nothing happens. You can ghost a friend and never see the consequence. The ancient signal your brain runs still fires, but the audience that was supposed to receive it is gone. And that is why anger in modern life can feel like a machine with nothing left to drive. There is one more layer worth understanding, though, and it is the most practically useful one. Anger in a small band was often a one-shot move. You raised the issue. The group adjusted. The social negotiation closed, and everyone moved on. In a world of ongoing relationships, permanent digital records, and colleagues you will see every Monday for the next 5 years, that same anger can cost you things you will not get back. The relationship, the opportunity, the reputation you spent years building. Boehm's bands had a clean social reset. The next morning, everyone ate together, and the ledger was clear. We do not have that luxury, and our ancestors never had to develop the skills for navigating a world where the people you are angry at never fully leave. And that is where George Newman comes in. Newman, a psychologist who studies anger and moral outrage, has found something counterintuitive. The people who get the best long-term results from anger are not the ones who express it most forcefully. They are the ones who express it most credibly. A calm, specific, factually grounded statement of offense carries more weight than a loud one because it signals that you have the standing, the composure, and the substance to back it up. Loud anger can intimidate in the moment. Credible anger changes the relationship permanently. And in a world where your reputation follows you across jobs, industries, and social circles, the permanent change is what matters. Newman also studied how bystanders respond to anger expressions, and what he found cuts against everything pop psychology tells you. Witnesses to a furious outburst tend to sympathize with the target, not the expressor. They update downward on the angry person's credibility and emotional regulation. But when the same legitimate grievance is delivered calmly and specifically, witnesses update in the opposite direction. They think more of the person who held their ground without losing their ground. The anger tax is real, and you pay it every time the heat overrides the signal. So what can you actually do with this? The reframe that changes everything is this. Anger is a signal, not a surrender. It is your nervous system communicating that something matters enough to escalate. You get to decide what that escalation looks like. A credible, calm statement that your welfare matters can carry the same weight as a raised voice, and it costs you less in every direction. The anger itself is not the power. The credibility behind it is. The deeper move, though, the one that changes your life over years, is this. Anger only works when you have already established a track record of being someone whose judgment and cooperation matter. Without that credibility, anger is just noise. The person on the other end might flinch, but they will not update. The real goal is not to get better at expressing anger. It is to become the kind of person others have good reason to listen to, so the anger becomes unnecessary more often than it is necessary. That is the game your ancestors were playing too, by the way. They just had fewer tools to win it cleanly. Here's the question worth sitting with tonight. What is the thing you are most afraid to raise your voice about? And what would it look like to say that thing calmly, credibly, and once, so the anger does not have to do it for you? Now go back to the beginning. Someone yelled in your face. Your heart slammed. Your hands went cold. And then, against every piece of advice you have ever been given, you gave them what they wanted. But think about the room. Everyone else in it felt something too. The atmosphere changed, people shifted, someone coughed, and most of them adjusted their estimate of the situation before they had fully decided what they thought. Not because they were weak, not because they were scared, because your nervous system sent a signal and the crowd received it and updated and moved. That is the part nobody tells you about anger. It does not just work on the person in front of you, it works on everyone watching. And that raises a question that goes both ways. If the crowd updates their behavior every time someone sends the right signal, then what happens to you when you are not the one sending it? What happens to your opinions, your choices, your certainty about what is right and true and worth defending? When was the last time you held a position firmly in a room where everyone disagreed? Anger is one signal, but it is not the only one. And understanding how the crowd shapes what you believe before you have finished deciding for yourself might be the most unsettling thing you learn this month. That is the next one. Here is why you follow the crowd, and it is not for the reason you think.